Hey everybody, Rosematter here. Welcome to part 19 of my Chaos Child Let's Play. And man, oh man, we are just getting so much information dumped on us with the revelation that yes, the dad is the one who is kind of the mastermind behind the murders. I had my suspicions about him a while back because of the fact he's a doctor. He was taking in orphan children, and I mean the fact that three of the children actually that he took in turned out to be psychics. Like, what are the odds of that happening? And also the fact a doctor, he'd be maybe connected in a way to the experiments on the psychics. I just had a feeling about him, but I kind of like pushed him in the back of my mind, and I was focused more on the teacher. So yeah, it was quite shocking that the father is actually basically manipulating Serica to commit the murders, because Serica, her whole reason for being is to protect Tuckru. Like, that's why she was born, was from his desire for his imaginary friend to save him, which was like, whoa, that's pretty crazy. So now she's going to confront the father at the planetarium where the events of Chaos Head took place. And meanwhile, the rest of the psychics are going to be leaving Shibuya to try and keep them safe, I guess. I don't know why. Shibuya just doesn't seem to be a good place for psychics and for gigalomaniacs. So that's where we left off. So I'm excited to see how much more of this we have to go. It seems like we are kind of culminating towards the end with the big final showdown between Serica and the father. And yeah, let's go ahead and see what happens next. November 6, 2015, Friday.
では最後に神聖の町渋谷のますますの発展を願い開催の言葉とさせていただきます。皆様ご協力のほどよろしくお願いいたします。
November 6, 2015, 9 a.m. The second Shibuya Peace and Restoration Festival had begun. The people gathered in front of the Hikari Wo began to loudly applaud when the mayor finished his speech. Then they started to split off to visit the concerts and stalls that they wanted to go see. Over 80% of the people here had come from outside Shibuya. Many were from Tokyo, but others had come all the way from outside the country to witness the celebration. There was easily more than 100,000 people attending. The first festival was held last year to celebrate the 5th anniversary of the reconstruction, and the whole ward had come out to celebrate. A similar event had also been done a year after the earthquake, but it had been less of a festival and more of a memorial. The rebuilding work was proceeding at a feverish pitch, but at that point it was still too early to call it a city reborn. But last year, even though there were still areas that were covered in rubble, the 5th year anniversary and the prospect of the tax revenue that would come along with it were enough to get the government to hold a festival for the whole ward. Despite being only a one-day event, it had attracted over 80,000 people and worldwide attention. It was such a big success that for this year the city had put even more effort into it. The concerts were bigger and there were more places to eat and drink. The main areas were centered around the Hikari-wo building, as well as the Shibuya Cultural Hall, Shibuya's 107 building, and Shibuya Sign Center. All the main roads around the station were closed to any traffic that wasn't bringing in people or equipment to the festival. Bunka Muradori and Donkenzaka Dori in particular were overflowing with performers and stalls. A reporter with Tokyo Next TV saw the cameraman nod and then looked at the scene in front of her. This whole thing was stupid, and she could tell she was getting tired. Center Guy, one of Shibuya's busiest shopping streets. This street always had a lot of young people to begin with, and now with the festival it was covered with stalls to visit and filled with people of all ages. When she'd been given the job of reporting on the Shibuya Reconstruction Festival several months ago, she'd literally jumped for joy. The reason she was so excited was the vocalist for one of her favorite bands, Takiyanagi Momone, was going to be performing on stage. Ever since she'd happened to hear Takiyanagi's voice at a concert hall, she'd been a fan. Or perhaps a dedicated believer. That's the girl that died, right? She was willing to do whatever it took to get a camera to her performance at the Restoration Festival, so that the whole world could see how wonderful she was. But she'd been caught up in the return of the new gen madness and was murdered. Now there was barely any point in covering the Restoration Festival anymore. But she still had to smile and obey when her boss told her to come here. And in the end, she'd wanted to believe a big TV station would be better than this. What she was doing was little better than rubbernecking.
ああ、いたいた。ほら。
The cameraman pointed at a group of people wearing homemade t-shirts. The shirts had a white print background with a photo on the front and a big red ... question mark that covered the photo. They were all young, just like the others she'd interviewed so far. She covered her annoyance with the same smile she used to deal with her obnoxious boss. Then she pushed through the crowd and got close to the group.
こんにちは。何してるんですか？
お、テレビ？どこっすか？
Who cares, she thought to herself, but she told them she was with Tokyo Next.
これっすよ、これ。
He pulled on his t-shirt to show her. The photo in the center was of two fat male faces, the sumo sticker.
テレビ来てるってことは、やっぱマジなんすか？スイポの情報。
何ですかそれ？
She played dumb and acted surprised. She certainly couldn't tell them that she'd come here because of a rumor on Twipo, especially one that was almost certainly a lie.
宮代がここで自殺するって噂が流れてんすよ。
She knew about that. Before dawn, it was supposed to happen in front of the big TVs, and a few hours ago it was next to the station of Hachiko in front of the station.
宮代って、あの指名手配になっている宮代拓くんですか？
あ、画像ありますよ。
He started to fiddle with his smartphone, seemingly oblivious to the fact she hadn't asked to see it. It was the same picture of Miyashiro Takaru that she was already sick of seeing. According to her boss, it was from his student handbook.
こんなものどうして持ってるんですか？
ネット見てないんすか？みんな持ってますよ。
俺らマジで懸賞金狙ってますから。
A reward. Come to think of it, there was a fake rumor about that going around.
その T シャツはご自分で作られたんですか？
まさか、さっき300円で買ったんすよ。超絶ダサいっしょ。ネタネタ。
And then they started to laugh, though she didn't get the joke. She could feel herself getting more and more aggravated. She'd seen similar t-shirts and placards, and even some of them that were declaring Miyashiro Takaru a god and glorifying the sumo stickers. Some of them were being sold as part of a movement to get rid of the sumo stickers so people could focus on the festival. But most people were just wearing them to be part of the chaos. Of course, this was the first time she'd seen anyone who actually believed in the reward.
宮代拓くんについてどう思いますか？
調子こいてますね。連続殺人？しかも同じ施設のやつもでしょ？何やってもいいと思ってんすよ、こいつ。
こいつのこと、神とか言ってるオタク連中？マジキモくないっすか？俺らそういうの許せないんすよ。
She ignored most of what they were saying. There was no need to go any deeper. As long as she had the footage on her camera, that would be good enough.
でも
Everyone seemed to think Miyashiro Takaru was the killer. At least, everyone who'd come to the festival to find him seemed to think so. And they were probably right. The official announcement just said he was wanted as a person of interest. But if he wasn't the killer, they wouldn't have used his real name. And she'd heard they were in fact looking for him as a suspect, though she didn't know where the information had come from.
宮代拓ニュージェネレーションの狂気の再来の犯人。
She suddenly felt a rage building inside her. There was no way she could do what she'd originally set out to do now. The angel with the heavenly voice was dead. But if there was one reason to participate in this festival...
そうだ。噂話でも何でもいい。宮代の目撃情報をどうにかしてかき集めて、わかりやすくこういう奴らの前にさらしてやる。
If he wanted to kill himself in public, he was probably some kind of sick madman. If he pulled it off, even more idiots might start worshipping him, and that was probably just what he wanted. She wouldn't let that happen. That wouldn't atone for her murder at all. He deserved a miserable, painful death, preferably with people throwing rocks at him like an old historical drama.
ちょっと、どうしたの？
Only then did she realize the people in front of her had stopped talking. She said thank you and went to go find another person to interview.
そうだ。すいません。最後に一つ。
She suddenly stopped and asked the group one last question she thought of before they disappeared into the crowd.
今日はどちらから？
埼玉っすよ。チャリで来ました。
Then they laughed again, but she still didn't get the joke. This time, she turned around without thanking them and walked off into the busy street. She could tell her cameraman looked confused. He didn't seem to understand the meaning of her question. If they were from Saitama, that meant they weren't from Shibuya. And from the looks of it, they weren't victims of the earthquake either. People who had nothing to do with the Shibuya earthquake were here looking for Miyashiro. So were the victims of the earthquake she just interviewed a while ago, who were hoping that the Restoration Festival would be a success. And so were people with a grudge to bear against him, like her.
出てこい。宮代。
Her thoughts were never going to be heard on TV, and the people nearby couldn't hear them either. But they were shared by the vast majority of people at the Restoration Festival. Whenever she saw someone wearing a sumo sticker on their clothes, she figured they were after Miyashiro. And when she went to interview them, she found out that she was right. But, in fact, the news that Miyashiro was going to kill himself in front of the crowd had been playing on TV every hour since the previous night. And because of that, over 98% of the people at the festival had heard it. There was literally no place safe for him in the city.
調子こいてますね。連続殺人？しかも同じ施設のやつもでしょ？何やってもいいと思ってんすよ、こいつ。
The words made him sick, so I turned off the TV. I realized the skin on the soles of my feet were starting to rub off and unclenched my toes. Felt like if I didn't keep some part of my body tensed up, I'd scream and start smashing things. I'd always hated outsiders who never cared about the actual people caught up in something. But this time, it was different. See, this is, somebody made a good point on the video a little while ago. The one about, like, the reveal of Yui's death is, like, Miyashiro was one of those people who just, like, I wouldn't say he got, like, a sick satisfaction out of it, but it was, like, a morbid fascination. And I feel like a lot of us are guilty about that, where it's like we can see things from the outside when we're not directly involved or personally involved, like we don't know the people. So we see it almost like, it's almost like a TV show or entertainment when there's stuff like this going on. But when you are directly affected by it, obviously it's going to be a lot different. But yeah, he was one of those people who just saw things on the internet and commented on them, but like didn't really take it too seriously.
誰が調子ついてるって。
Damn it, you don't know anything. You don't understand anything. And if you don't know anything, then keep your mouth shut. I wasn't the one who killed Nono or Yui. Sarika had been sitting in her chair, barely moving. She seemed to be staring at a spot on the wall, just waiting for time to pass.
タクルさん。
And I keep forgetting Kazuki's also there. When they keep saying, like, they mention Hana, or Hana, I keep forgetting that that's Kazuki.
おい、ここへ来ちゃダメだろ。
Maybe Kazuki also is a psychic. I wouldn't be surprised. She's just been really good at keeping it a secret. I suddenly shut my mouth. Uki and Kazuki were both looking at Sarika. Their hands were shaking, either with fear or suppressed rage, or maybe both.
新庄さんと優斗は。
新庄さんは今電話を。優斗くんはお薬を飲んで私の部屋で眠ってます。
そっか。
I was glad he was asleep. If he saw the person who killed his sisters, he probably wouldn't be able to handle it. He was still in elementary school after all. And then to learn that his dad was also the one, like, not only did someone he considered like a friend, Yuto, Sarika was very close to the family, but if he learns that his dad was the one who told Sarika to kill both of his sisters, like his actual sister and his adoptive sister, yeah, I don't think he'd come back from that. I imagine he's gonna have to learn at some point if what's his name, Saitama? If he dies, or like something happens to him, and like what happens to Yuto? So Kunasato is gonna take off from Shibuya with me and Uki and Aramura. What's gonna happen with Yuto? Is Yuto just gonna stay here with Shinjo? Is he gonna come with us? The two of them stared at Serica, unmoving. Serica didn't move either, but
本当だ。
at some point, Serica turned away from the wall to look at them.
クルス・ノノを殺したのは私だよ。山添雨季、和樹花。
Their expression suddenly changed. Serica must have read their thoughts. They took a few steps back and shivered.
他のすべての事件もあなたなんですか？
そうだ。
どうして？いえ、だったら。
Serica's voice was calm, but Uki's was small and shaky.
私がいた場所のこと何か知ってるんですよね。私がお世話をしていた皆さんは今どこに？
さあな。私にはわからない。
She's like, and I don't care, really.
答えてください。お願いです。あなたがすべての犯人なら知っているはずです。
I suddenly realized why Uki wouldn't back down.
そうだ。
A woman, right? Uki didn't know about Dad yet. Oh, yeah. Oh, that's gonna be heartbreaking for the kids. I had to have the time to tell her, and...
ウキは父さんを慕っていたから。
Uki was extremely shy, and it was Nono and Dad who'd given her a place here. It seemed she always found her meaning in life through helping others, so doctors must have been people she really looked up to.
話せるわけないだろう。
山添雨季。
Oh shit, I was gonna be like, Serica's probably gonna be like, that's alright, I'll tell her.
やめろ。
I jumped out of my chair.
お前なら佐久間の正体に気づける可能性があったんだがな。
I was thinking about that
おそらく
too.
6年前に会っているはずだ。
I don't know if I mentioned it before, but I was thinking about that. Like, when Uki was at the facility, when she was at Tokyo Hospital, did she ever meet Sakuma, but just didn't make that connection? And then maybe when she called him sir, maybe it wasn't just a matter of the fact that he's a doctor, so she immediately defers to him because he's a person of authority, but also maybe subconsciously she remembered him.
まあ、あんな状況では無理かもしれないが、佐久間は。
だからやめろ!
As I screamed, I hit her with my power without even thinking about it. I slammed her off of her chair and onto the floor. And then I walked over and grabbed her by the hair. I'd never been this violent with a girl before. I could hear Uki and Kazuki gasping at the change.
こっちを見ろ。
I'd grabbed her by the hair to make her look me right in the eye.
いい加減にしろよお前。これ以上大切な家族の心を壊すな。
I looked at her, mustering all the rage I could in my mind. She should have been able to tell how angry I was. Serica must have felt my anger, or maybe it hurt where I grabbed her hair because her face twisted a little in pain. I looked back and saw Uki staring at Serica with wide eyes. Kazuki looked sad too.
もうやめてください。いくら尾上さんがその悪い人でもタクルさんがそんな怖いことするの見たくないです。
そうだな。
I let go of Serica's hair. She ran her hand through it violently to try and get it back into place.
タクルさん、先生はどうしたんですか？今どこにいるんですか？それに新庄さんが突然荷物をまとめろって、それと何か関係あるんですか？
それは。
There were tears in Uki's eyes, but I couldn't bring myself to tell her the truth. Serica stood up, and then she grabbed her stomach again for some reason. There was blood on her hands.
父さんにやられたっていう傷か。
Come to think of it, her wound looked like it had opened when I'd used my powers on her back at Frisia. Damn it. I wonder if he's gonna he's like, fuck, I gotta patch her up. I turned to Uki, who looked like she was on the verge of breaking down in tears.
後で必ず話すから。今は言われた通りに荷物をまとめてくれ、ウキ。
でも、
Uki looked like she wanted to ask more questions, but Kazuki grabbed her hand firmly and shook her head. I'm thinking, why is Kazuki with us? She doesn't really have much to do with this, other than, I don't know, because she is a friend of mine, so maybe the media might be, looking for her to ask her questions. Or, like I said, I wouldn't be surprised if she was secretly a psychic as well, and she somehow snuck under everybody's radar, including Serika's. Maybe she's, the final boss. Maybe she's silent because she has to stay silent because it's part of her power or something. I don't know, but, I still don't know what is the point of Kazuki. And then she pushed her gently on the shoulder and led her out of the room. I said thanks in my mind for Kazuki's kindness. And as soon as I heard the two of them start to quietly pack up in Uki's room, I invited Serika downstairs. He probably is going to patch her up.
いいから来いって。あれ?
When I went inside the examination room, I didn't see Kunasato-san or Arimura.
変だな。
I thought they'd still be here.
外科用の設備などここにはないだろう。
Serika must have already read my mind.
一般家庭の救急箱よりマシだろ。それに。
And Nono had said Dad used to be a brain surgeon and that he had done operations on patients during the Shibuya earthquake. She said that even now there were still patients who said he'd saved their lives.
そうだ。父さんは。
That must be hard to wrestle with, is to know that he is a horrible person who's killed people that he cares about, or at least has been the reason why people have died, but also to know that he was also a good person who saved people's lives. That must be a really hard thing to wrestle with. Dad was a good doctor. The people in the neighborhood loved him. He drank too much, and he could be a little lazy, but he was a man who found his life's work in helping others. He was a man I really respected. So why? At first, I hadn't believed he could betray us, but as time passed, it started to seem more and more real. I knew it was pathetic, but I almost started to cry. I tried to take my mind off of it by going through the shelves, which were filled with gauze and drugs. But all the medicine bottles had neat labels in Nono's handwriting, and when I saw them, it only made me want to cry more.
違うな。佐久間は相手の思考を誘導するという最悪な力を手に入れ、それを楽しんでいる人間だ。なのに、表向きはいい医者を演じていた。
Maybe it was it was a weird kind of power play he got from it. You hear about serial killers and stuff who, they are in positions of where they help people and they have the facade of being a good person, and I think they get maybe he gets some weird sick pleasure out of it. Serika lifted up her skirt and showed me her stomach. Ooh, jeez. Ugh.
お前、それ。
It was covered with packing tape that had been stained dark red. It was wound. Probably wound. It was wound poorly and far too tight.
佐久間は以前、私が傷の応急処置にガムテープを使っているのを見て笑っていたよ。やるじゃねえか、と意味のわからないことを言ってな。お前は2番目の事件を覚えているか？ストリートミュージシャンの高柳が殺された事件だ。
ああ。
腹が裂かれてスピーカーが埋め込まれていた。あの時、思考誘導された高柳が止血に使ったのがやはりガムテープだ。思考誘導された高柳が裂いた腹をガムテープで処置しているのを見た。なぜそんなことをさせているのか、あいつに尋ねたが。
Oh, I wonder if it's a thing because it's gonna hurt really bad to take that off because it's packing tape is sticky. Ooh, ooh.
お前に似てるだろ？ 人形みたいで面白いじゃねえか。
I could imagine his tone and his voice. I felt all the hairs on my body stand up on end.
私は佐久間の思考を読んだ。何を考えてそんな言葉が出てくるのか知らなければと思った。
Erica gave a deep sigh as if letting out something that had been building up inside her.
あいつは言葉以上のことを考えていなかった。頭の中にはただ面白いという声だけが反響していた。あいつは異常だ。よく快楽殺人と言われるものがあるが、それですらない。自分にとって面白いかどうかだけが重要で、その行為が殺人かどうかにさえ興味がないんだ。あいつに気持ちを寄せるな、理解しようとするな。優しい父親だったという思い込みを捨てろ。
別にそんなつもりはない。
違う。お前はまだ佐久間に対して何かを期待している。でもあいつにとっては食後のお前たちとの談笑も残虐な殺人も同じことなんだぞ。
そんなつもりないって言ってるだろ。
I couldn't tell how my confused thoughts appeared to Sarika, because I truly didn't know how I felt myself. Dad was trying to join some organization called the Committee. That's why he was going to kill me and put an end to the case. I was tired of hearing that.
だいたいそれをすぐに受け入れろって言われたって無理に決まってるだろ。
Just 10 hours ago, Dad was Dad, a lazy guy who drank too much, a doctor everybody loved. Without another word, just thinking about the packing tape, that's gotta be so painful. Sarika began to tear off the packing tape in a disorderly manner.
ここは外科じゃないからな。手術道具が置いてあるとは思えない。それより奥の机の一番下の引き出しを見てくれ。
何？
クルスノノがよく使っていた机だ。そこに裁縫道具が入っているだろう。
Kurusu had indeed kept sewing tools in there to patch the buttons back onto Dad's white coat. Did she learn that by reading Kurusu's mind? I was angry, but I did what she said anyway. There was a bag filled with sewing tools there, like always. I gave them to Sarika, and she grabbed a needle and thread at random. She disinfected them and started to wordlessly sew up her own stomach. Seeing the sewing needle stick into her pale white skin was worse than seeing the wound itself. She showed no hesitation and no sign of being in pain.
こいつ、今までどんな生活を？
Our eyes suddenly met. I forced myself to think of something else before she could answer my question.
父さんは僕やお前をどこに呼び出したんだ？
Sarika finished her stitches and tore off the end of the thread.
すべての始まりとなった場所。その始まりの時刻に来いと言っていただろう。
わかんねえか？今回の事件、いや、6年前の事件も含めてすべてが始まった場所だよ。そう、そこだよ。ついでに時間も合わせようじゃねえか。あの時あの場所でってやつだ。
That's what he had said. A place where everything began.
お前や久野里が考えた通り、元凶は渋谷地震にある。あれは、とある装置が爆発したせいで引き起こされたものだ。そして、お前たちが発生因子と呼んでいるもの。実際は、ある特殊な電磁波だが、それが拡散されてしまった。それによって、望まれない能力者が覚醒することになった。
渋谷地震が人工地震だったっていう陰謀論は事実だったのか？
そういうことになるな。お前たちもフリージアで話していたが、その装置はかつて渋谷駅前のプラネタリウムに密かに設置されていた。
Kunosato-san had been the one to tell me that. Some company had bought out the planetarium and used it to do experiments.
でもあそこは今光王が立ってるだろ。
そう。だが、光王の中に、かつてのプラネタリウムの DNA を引き継ぐというコンセプトのもと、新たに建造された施設がある。それが、シアターキューブだよ。
え？
The theater cube, a huge theater located inside the Hikariwo. It was used for musicals and famous performance groups from both inside and outside Japan. It was the largest part of the Hikariwo building and one of its most popular attractions. It was modeled after the old planetarium.
そういえば、あそこには。
I'd gone there just once before. There was a foreign musical playing. I remembered being amazed at the size of the place and the luxurious design, but what I remembered best was the faces of the people I'd gone with. Yui, Yuto, Nono, and Dad. I think it was to celebrate Nono and I making it to Hekiho Academy. We'd made it to Hekiho, which offered free tuition for earthquake orphans. And Dad had joked, this frees up a lot of cash, and bought us expensive front row seats. Nono had gotten mad at him and told him he was wasting money. Thinking back, that was the first time the five of us had ever gone anywhere as a family. It was a memory I treasured. But...
なんで父さんはそんなところを選んだんだろう。
probably also like a weird part of like he just found that amusing. Like he's secretly, it was I don't know. Onoe closed her eyes for a moment.
おそらくはお前だ、宮代拓。
僕。
Probably like he just found it funny that he brought the orphans to a place that caused them to be orphans in a weird way.
今回の復興祭、光王はその中心の役割を担っていて、大勢の人間が集まっている。あいつは声明通り、お前を衆目の中、自殺に見せかけて殺すつもりだろう。
Using his mind control, she continued.
それに、復興祭の昼のイベントさえ終わってしまえば、夜の劇場は巨大な無人スペースになる。万一、ディソードで切り合う羽目になっても、人目を避けられる。
Wait. I thought she said that he wasn't a psychic, but he's saying he has a D sword.
始まりの場所に来い、などと大行なことを言っていたが、あいつが何の意図もなく場所と時間を指定するはずがない。
ってことは、時間っていうのは
午後10時28分。
I would never forget that time. It was exactly when the Shibuya earthquake had struck.
午後10時28分をもって復興祭の雰囲気は一変する。それまでのお祭り騒ぎから参加者全員が黙祷を捧げ、渋谷は静寂に包まれる。そんな中、自殺の声明を出したお前が登場するわけだ。どうなるか想像がつくだろう。あのクズめ。
There was disgust in her words, but it wasn't rage. It sounded like she was suffering somehow. Why, Sarika? If you're that angry, if you're in that much pain.
なんでお前はずっと父さんに従っていたんだよ。
何度も言っている。私を生み出した時のことは覚えているだろう。
Sarika, save me. Please, please.
お願いだから僕に。あの時お前は自らの生存を助けてくれる私を望んだ。私はそのようにして生まれた。それ以外に優先させる目的など私には存在しない。そのために他のすべてを捨ててきた。お前に生み出されたあの瞬間から私はそうやって生きてきたんだ。いや、そう生きることを与えられて私は生まれたんだ。お前を生かすためであれば、相手が佐久間だろうと誰だろうと黙って従う。
I couldn't speak. If what Serica says is true, then the real cause behind all of this is...
責任を感じる必要はないぞ、宮代拓。
I shuddered reflexively as she read my mind.
お前はこれまで何も知らなかった。ギガロマニアックスのことも、その存在の裏で暗躍する連中がいることも。だから、これはお前のせいじゃない。
The feelings that were hurting me deep inside my heart came boiling up.
いいのかよ。
I forced myself to speak the words.
お前はそれでいいのかよ。
That's right, even if I was the one who created you, even if I did give you a reason to live.
ユイやノノを殺したんだぞ。
That wasn't what I wished for. The kind and gentle Serica I knew ever since I was a kid would never wish for that either. You had to keep me alive, even if it meant losing Nono and Yui, even if it meant killing them. That wasn't what the two of us wished for. If you really are willing to give up everything just for the sake of the goal you were given, then you're not human at all.
本当にただの人形みたいじゃないか。
Serica remained motionless, likely accepting all the thoughts and feelings I had shot in her direction. All she did was silently meet my gaze with her own.
そろそろ行く。
Serica was the first one to break the silence. She tossed away the old packing tape, the used gauze she'd put on her wounds, and the remaining fresh bandages into the trash, then adjusted her clothes.
渋谷から出た後は、しばらくはおとなしくしていろ。取るべき行動は、久野里美代が指示してくれるだろう。
She headed for the door of the examination room. She wasn't looking at me anymore. She put her hand on the doorknob, and without looking back, she told me.
夜までここにいるつもりだったが、山添雨季の能力が割と厄介だ。今余計なことをされると困る。それに、お前の心変わりが起きても困るしな。
何？
But before I could say anything else, the door opened. Shinjo-san was standing there. I wasn't sure how long he'd been there for. He looked down at Serica, seemingly trying to keep his emotions in check.
なるほど。迷っているのか。
君は殺人犯だ。
He blocked Serica's path as he spoke.
どんな事情があるにせよ。そしてその事情が常識で測れないものであっても、殺人は殺人だ。法によって君は裁かれなければならない。
そうだろうな。
Serica's voice was calm.
それに、今回の事件は尊敬していた先輩の弔い合戦でもある。
It's gotta be the, oh my gosh, what was his name? The one that got killed in the first one, because, of course, they were connected in some way. The two of them stood facing each other. The air was thick with tension between them. Bon was his name, I think? They stood like that for almost a full minute. I couldn't see Serica's face from here, but Shinjo-san's expression seemed to waver once in a while. He probably knew Serica was reading his mind, so he was likely thinking of all the things he wanted her to know. It felt like there was a silent but intense discussion going on between them. Eventually, Shinjo-san sighed. He moved to the side with a pained expression on his face.
いいんだな。
復興祭が終わった後、上層部からどんな圧力がかかってこようと、俺は君と佐久間を追う。どこへ逃げようとな。
お前が追うのは一人で済む。生き残るのは私か佐久間のどちらかだけだ。
She went to walk out of the room at a pace which belied her injury, or
宮代
belied her
拓。
injury. She stopped, and without looking back, she said,
生き残れよ。何があっても。お前だけは生き残れ。
and then she disappeared.
あまり思い詰めるなよ。
何をですか？
いや。
He scratched his head, then checked the time and frowned.
警察は厳戒態勢で復興祭の警備に当たっている。俺もこの後、一旦ここを離れなくちゃいけない。その間、代わりの警官が来る。そうだな。ウキ君の部屋に隠れているといい。君がいるとは思ってないから、探しはしないはずだ。
はい。
おそらく戻りは夜になる。そのタイミングで渋谷を離れよう。準備をしておいてくれ。
わかりました。
I answered him, but my body wouldn't move. My hands were clenched tight, and I hadn't even realized it. I felt so frustrated, so angry and disgusted with myself. All these horrible things were going on around me, and someone else had already decided how I was going to escape them. I had done nothing at all. I wonder if he's gonna sneak out and then go with Sarika to try and help her out. Or at least to kill Sakuma, maybe to confront him. Shinjo-san seemed to be about to say something, but he instead left the room silently. The clock said it was past 10 a.m. I was supposed to be getting ready to leave Shibuya, but I couldn't leave Aoba dorm right now. Most of the stuff in my room was already taken by the police. There wasn't much for me to do.
だいたい渋谷を離れる本当の理由は何だ?
It might just be to avoid the warrant, but it was clear from the way Sarika and Kunosato-san were talking that there was probably another reason. Something that had to do with us psychics. And something that had to do with Chaos Child Syndrome. I quickly closed my eyes and shook my head. No, don't do it. Don't try to find out. Remember your promise to Nono. You've already learned what happens when you try to find out about things you're not supposed to know, right?
尾上は言ったな。
I looked up and saw Kunosato-san and Arimura by the door.
いつからというか。
Were they at the front desk next to the examination room the whole time?
尾上に思考洞察されたくなかったのでな。とっさに有村と逃げ込んだ。
Kunosato-san entered the room. Arimura followed after, but when she saw the bandages and tape in the wastebasket, she looked at me angrily.
別にあいつの味方になったわけじゃない。
I sounded a little guilty as I said it, but all Arimura said was, I know. But the look on her face was strange. It was as if she blamed me, but wasn't able to say it aloud. So the air was still delicate between us.
なんだ?
え?
他にも何か言いたいことはあるんじゃないのか? 言ってくれよ。もう隠し事はたくさんなんだ。
そうですね。
Arimura looked at Kunosato-san for a moment, but evidently it was okay for her to tell me because she continued.
セリ、尾上セリカはなんて言ってましたか?
というと、
いろいろ話してましたよね。よく聞こえなかったけど、声はしてたから。
そうだな。
I gave them both a brief version of what Sarika had told me. Kunosato-san crossed her arms and thought for a moment, then whispered to herself.
やはりな。
え?
お前、どう考えている?
何がです?
尾上の言い分だ。
どうって。
I didn't even think about it. None of the things she had to say were things I wanted to hear.
たとえ僕が彼女を生み出してしまったとしても、どうしても納得できないというか。
違う。そういうことじゃない。
Kunosato-san raised a hand to cut me off.
あいつがしたことは許されない。それは、どんな理由を振りかざそうと変わらない。私が聞いているのはそういうことではなく、あいつが昨べ、事件に関して説明したことだ。お前はどう思った？
昨べ、尾上が話したこと。
What do I think? She told the truth, right? Arimura heard the whole thing and used her powers to check. Oh, was she lying? Oh shit. Did she just say that she was telling the truth but she wasn't? But Arimura looked down at her feet and softly said,
宮代先輩、覚えてますか? 伊藤先輩とゆいさんの事件の後、私が言ったこと。私がもっと注意深く能力を使っていれば、伊藤先輩の言葉がどこかおかしいって気づけたはずだって。
もう
I knew Aramura regretted that deeply, but what did that have to do with Serica? I looked at her face and suddenly figured out what she had meant. Was there something Serica had said?
嘘があったのか。
いえ、彼女は確かに真実を語っていました。でもなんか変なんです。うまく言えないけど、真実すぎるというか。
Too true?
なんだよそれ。
私、ずっと注意深く聞いてました。私の能力って、相手の言葉が本当か嘘か分かりますけど、人の言葉っていつも白黒はっきりしてるわけじゃないです。話してる時っていろいろ迷ったり曖昧になったり、自分でも何言ってるか分からなくなったり。
Is it like she was saying it was too perfect?
ちゃんとしてないですよね。
Like it was too clear?
だから普通は本当のことを話しててもぼんやりとしたグレーみたいな部分が混じってるものなんです。
人間が言葉を発するという行為は常に理路整然とした思考の上で行われているわけじゃないからな。理性と感情が入り混じり、時に論旨は飛躍し、会話の道筋はひどく不安定だ。
Kunosato-san had added onto Aramura's expression.
でも彼女の尾上セリカの言葉は全てまっすぐだったんです。
Maybe it's a thing too where it's like she believes it to be the truth, but it's not. I don't know. Like as long as someone believes that something is true, then they can't be lying.
それに、あいつの話そのものにも気に入らない点がある。
Kunosato-san sat down in a chair without asking permission.
フリージアであいつの話を聞いていたときは、愚かなことに、私も頭に血が上っていてな。冷静に考えられなかった。だが、ここへ来る途中、ふと疑問が浮かんで、そこから検討をしてみた。だから、尾上に思考洞察されるわけにいかなかったんだ。
ああ、それで。
Last night, Kunosato-san had stayed in the examination room instead of coming up to the living room to talk with everyone. That was the reason.
本格的におかしいと思ったきっかけは、
Yeah, because that's right. She
夕べ
can't
の電話でのやりとりだ。
she can't read people's minds over the phone, right? Because that was the same thing with Sakuma.
あいつは私に、お前を渋谷から逃がすように言った。それが、お前を生存させることにつながると。
ええ。
I remembered her saying that. Aramura seemed to be suspicious that her words were too true, but they seemed like the genuine truth to me.
確かに、お前を渋谷から逃がすということ自体は筋が通っている。お前にとっての脅威になってしまった佐久間を殺すという選択もな。だが、私にお前を託すというのが矛盾していないか。
Right? Yeah, the person who hates giglomaniacs, right? I didn't know what she meant. What was strange about it?
あいつは、どうして私にお前を託したと思う？
だから、久野里さんは何か知ってるんでしょう。僕らの知らない何かを。尾上はそれを
差し引いてだ。そもそも、あいつの存在意義がお前の生存にあるのなら、お前が最後の時を迎える瞬間まで、ずっと一緒にいなくてはならないはずだ。違うか？
だからそれは佐久間のせいで予定が狂って。
Aramura suddenly cut me off.
確かに彼女はそう言っていましたし、嘘はありませんでした。でも、嘘じゃないのはおかしいと思いませんか？
は？
I'm as confused as he is. I stared at her, uncertain of what she meant.
そう。あいつの言葉は、 真実に見せかけた嘘かもしれないんだよ。
Kunosato-san nodded.
真実に見せかけた嘘？
宮代拓を生かし続けるためならば手段は選ばない。あいつはそういう行動をする。
だから、それのどこに嘘が？
佐久間だと所詮末端組織の研究者に過ぎ。そんな小物と差し違えて何になる？ただの無駄死にでしかない。委員会は巨大だ。佐久間を殺したところで宮代の安全など全く保証されない。なのに自分が死んでしまってはどうにもならないだろう。
だから久野里さんに僕を預けるって。
バカを言うな。確かに私はお前をおとりにして委員会の実態を探りたいと思っている。だがお前など不必要になったら簡単に切り捨てる。守り続けるわけがない。尾上セリカは私の思考を読めるんだぞ。そんなことわからないと思うか？
つまり委員会が本当に宮代先輩を狙っているのなら、彼女は先輩のそばから絶対に離れるはずないんです。自分の手でどこまでも先輩を守ろうとするはず。違いますか？
それは。
そしてもう一つ、決定的におかしなことがある。あいつはなぜ最初からお前に真実を告げなかった？
最初？
渋谷地震による昏睡からお前が目覚めた時だよ。お前を生き延びさせることが目的なら真実を隠す必要なんて最初からないんだ。むしろ全てを正直に告げ、能力や委員会に対する情報をお前に与えた方が助かる可能性はずっと高い。そもそもそういった情報があればお前は一連の殺人事件にだって絶対に首を突っ込まなかっただろう。わざわざ危険な目に遭うことだってなかった。
ね、なんか変でしょ先輩。
She was right. I didn't realize it until they told me. I never would have done the things I did if I'd known what Serika had told me last night. Just like Kunosato-san said, I would have stayed away from the murders, and of course she was always there, always like kind of nudging me to keep going. In fact, I might have done something to keep us away from it. If I had, Nono and Yui might still... But...
なんで?
Why did she hide the truth? It's almost like...
逆に宮代先輩を危険な目に遭わせようとしてるみたいですよね。
Was it is it to like unlock my powers? Is that it? Because that's the thing, is like, if I had no reason to use my powers, I wouldn't have. So it's like, maybe she was putting me in danger so that I would unlock my potential, but that would put me in danger by, I don't know. Aramura said the thing I was thinking.
でも、尾上の言葉が嘘だなんてありえないだろ。昨夜は有村がそばにいたんだから。
いえ、方法がないこともないんです。私の能力の盲点をつく方法が。
有村の能力の盲点?
I remembered what Aramura had just said. Everything Serika had said was the truth, but it was too true. It was as if she was reading from a script. I understand now. There is one way to get through Arimura's power.
まさか、伊藤の時と同じ。
Aramura nodded slowly.
はい。私が伊藤先輩の異常を見過ごしてしまった。それと同じ方法なら。
思考誘導。
Meant there might be a little bit of hope.
つまり尾上は佐久間に思考誘導されていて、あんなことをしたのは伊藤と同じように操られていただけで。
But Aramura didn't look better when I asked her.
私もそれなら少しは救われるなって思ったんですけど。
あくまでも可能性の一つだ。それにすがるな。
だそうです。
そうか。
My shoulders slumped.
先輩。
妙な期待はするな。それすら罠かもしれん。
はい、わかってます。
I spoke clearly. I thought I was telling the truth. But Aramora looked down as if she was in pain.
今、嘘をついたのか。僕は。
Kunosato-san must have figured out what I was thinking because her expression became more stern.
私も思考誘導の線は考えている。でも、それも腑に落ちないんだ。佐久間が己の思考を操って、わざわざ仲間割れを演出する理由は何だ？
She was right. There was no reason for Dad to do that. If he'd sent Serica as an assassin, I would have been dead already. The two of us had even been alone together, and Serica had done nothing. I knew it. There was no point in hoping that Serica was really just a normal girl who didn't know anything. I should have been able to tell from watching her last night. The way she talked, the way she acted, the way she behaved toward everyone else. It was all different than the Serica I knew before. If mind control was involved, she would have acted like the Serica I knew. Because, and I hated myself for saying it, if she had been the old Serica, then I couldn't have brought myself to hate her. I would have thought about it for a long time, and then maybe forgiven her. And then, like an idiot, I would have done exactly what Dad wanted, and only regretted it the instant I was killed.
Miyashiro.
Kunosato-san's expression was as fierce as ever.
はい。
よく考えろ。もしかすると、これが重大な鍵かもしれない。昨日も聞いたことだが、地震の時、お前は何を望んだ？その結果、己がリアルブートされたのだとしたら、あいつに何を求めたんだ？本当にあいつは、お前を生存させることが目的なのか？
I remembered what it had been like back then. I remembered the hellish sights around me, the horrible headache, and I remembered begging Serica to help me. Serica said it was her goal to keep me alive, to save my life, literally. There was a brief but strong pain in my head. I pressed my hand to my forehead. Whenever I remembered that moment, the pain came back.
大丈夫ですか？
Aramor had been through the same pain, so she was worried. I raised my hand and told her I was okay.
とにかく、助けてくれと言った気がします。
I couldn't remember if I'd barely been able to get the words out, or if I'd shouted them at the top of my lungs, or if I'd even said them aloud at all. But I could remember asking Serica for help.
だけど。
It's the thing about the parents, right? Didn't he like say, I want you to disappear? Was that really all I wished for? Back then, There was a new pain. This time I could feel a throbbing in my temples. I pressed my hand harder into my head, and my nails dug into my skin. My whole body staggered, and I fell to the floor.
Senpai!
There was a warm sensation on my shoulder. Aramora was trying to help me up.
ごめん、大丈夫。
嘘です。
Aramora led me over to the bed in the corner of the examination room. I wanted to lie down right away, but...
いや、ダメだ。新庄さんが代わりの警官が来るって言ってたから、雨季の部屋に隠れてろって。
じゃあ、もういいですから、上に行きましょう。
I nodded and thanked her. She held me by the shoulder. I forced my body to softly push off her and stand up on its own.
久野里さんも、すいません。
She sighed in resignation and shook her head. It's fine, she said.
どのみち、尾上がここにいない以上、情報の裏付けは取れないしな。お前の話だと、 尾上は今夜10時28分にシアターキューブに現れるということだが、残念ながら私では能力者2人を相手にして立ち回りを演じることはできそうにない。ハンドガンも久しく撃ってないしな。
She's like, I lived in America. Of course I've handled a gun. Aramura turned to Kunosato-san, surprised that she'd fire a gun. Kunosato-san seemed unusually hesitant, but told us.
仕方がない。尾上の言うことにはどこか矛盾があるとはいえ、今はそれを探る時間も人も全く足りない。
So maybe in this case, like, we won't know what she meant, but with subsequent playthroughs, we'll be able to get the whole story and maybe be able to save her, question mark?
とりあえずだが、
Maybe we'll be able to save Kurisu as well? I don't know if she'll always
新庄さんが戻ってく
die.
るのを待って渋谷を脱出する。もし何らかの企みがそこにあるなら乗ってやるまでだ。
I went to Uki's room to hide before the police officer got there, and found Yuto curled up asleep on her bed. He must have been crying for a long time, because the area around his eyes were red, and I could see tear marks on his cheeks. Uki was sitting on the bed, softly holding his hand. She'd probably been like that for a long time. It seemed like a very natural thing for her to do.
ちゃんとお姉さんしてるんだな。
いえ、私なんてまだ。
Her voice was soft and kind so as not to wake Yuto, but there was a loneliness mixed in with her words. I could see she was looking at a photo on the desk. It was a picture of Yui and Uki. I couldn't tell when it was taken. Yui was hugging Uki from behind, and pressing her cheek up against Uki's blushing face. I thought about the person who'd taken this picture. If it wasn't one they'd taken themselves, someone else had to have taken it. It couldn't have been Yuto. If Yuto was there, he'd be standing in between the two of them. And Dad wasn't into taking photographs, which meant it was probably Nono. I could tell what Uki was thinking when she looked at it. She was thinking about when Nono had taken the picture.
出発は夜になるって。準備できてる？
はい、一応は。でも、よくわからなくて。
Neither did I. It wasn't that I didn't know what to take. I didn't know what was happening to me. I hadn't even been told where we were going, except that we were leaving Shibuya.
とりあえず一旦離れるだけだから心配しなくていいと思うよ。
はい。
Yuki smiled just a little at Arimura's attempt to make her feel better.
お前は大丈夫なのか？
大丈夫っすよ。前から旅に出てみたかったんで。
She was joking around, probably because Uki was here. It felt like old times, and I smiled a little. Of course, she wasn't okay. She was leaving the town where she'd lived, with no notice at all. And she was leaving because someone wanted to kill her.
なんて言うんですかね、こういうの。バンドワゴン？バンドでワゴン？
No, and the second one doesn't even make any sense. I suddenly realized Kazuki was in the corner of the room chewing dried squid. I hadn't seen that in a while either. It was kind of a relief. Like, Kazuki's gonna have to do something at some point, right? There's gotta be a purpose to her being around.
花、ユウトが起きちゃうから。はあ、着替え足りるかな。買わなきゃダメか。
Aramura tugged at her outfit as she spoke.
有村さん、よかったらですけど。よかったら、ののさんの使ってください。ののさんの部屋にありますから。
Aramura froze. She clearly didn't know what to say.
いや、でもそれは。
いいんです。ね、タクルさん。
I was a little surprised. For a moment, she looked like Nono or Yui. She'd probably decided that she'd protect Yuto, and so she was trying to be a big sister like they were. I nodded to both of them.
なあ、 ノノはどんなものでも無駄にするのが大嫌いだったから、もらってやってくれないか。
けど先輩は。
いいんだ。
Aramura seemed a little surprised, but her face finally took on a serious expression.
わかりました。もらっていきます。
はい。
あ。
Aramura ran to Nono's room to get the clothes before the policeman came. I decided I should probably check if there were any clothes left in my room, then stood up.
渋谷を離れる。
I tried to leave the room quietly so as not to wake Yuto, and then I stopped.
地震の時、お前は何を望んだ？その結果、尾上がリアルブートされたのだとしたら、あいつに何を求めたんだ？
I remembered what Kunosato-san had just said. I looked around as if trying to find the answer to a problem I couldn't solve. And then I saw Uki holding Yuto's hands as he softly moaned in pain. I don't have to know, do I? I don't have to think about the things I don't know. This is the right thing to do. If I endured the headache long enough, I could probably find the answer. Like, this is probably what, if he chooses not to do it in this, like, in this playthrough, he's probably going to do it in other ones. Be like, no, I'm not going to shield myself from the truth. Like, I think deep down he knows, but he doesn't want to, like, he doesn't want to think about it. So, probably another time we'll do that. But I gave up and left Uki's room to go get ready instead. Alright guys, sorry for the shorter episode this week. I'm going to be out of town, so I couldn't record as much as I would have liked. So a little bit more just the build-up to the final showdown, but not too much. We did learn more about Serica, and an interesting comment towards the end with Aramura and Kunosato saying that Serica, while she seemed to be forthcoming with information, and she seemed to be telling the truth, she seems to also be hiding something. What did they say? Something like, it seemed too true, whatever that means. But she is hiding something, obviously. But I don't know if we're ever going to see her again, because she is on her way to go and take care of the dad, and she is not in a... She's not doing well, so she's not going at her, like, 100% best. So I could see Takaru, like, deciding that he's going to go and try and save Serica, even though he harbors hatred towards her. I think he's going to want to, or maybe even, like, just to confront the dad face to face and, like, talk to him. I don't see him just leaving with Kunosato quietly. I feel like he is going to maybe run away and go and confront the two of them face to face, and maybe he'll, like, truly be able to unlock his abilities and kill the dad. That's where I see it going anyway, but that is going to do it for me. I hope you guys enjoyed. I promise I will be having a longer episode next week, but I hope you did enjoy this, and stay tuned next week for part 20. Until next time, bye. Special shoutouts to my top tier patrons: Revealing Storm, Linz VA, Kenju Storm, iCognito, Kevlar, Waz RD1, iZuzu, Jesse Pelletier Lemire, and Lucas Gomez.